So I'll be sharing my PyCharm screen with us, where I'm going to start a new project. So here I already have my panel open, and I'll just be naming this project. I'm going to call it I can't remember the name we gave our last project. I'm just going to call this one my app. And here it is going to automatically create the virtual environment for me. It has already located the Python version that I already have on my system, so it's going to do that automatically for me. I don't need to do it myself anymore the way we were doing it on Visual Studio Code. Okay, so as you can see, it is creating the virtual environment right now. So the virtual environment is done creating. Okay, so we can see the project now. The virtual environment has been created successfully. So this is the virtual environment folder that we have right here. So I'll just go right into the terminal. We have the terminal at the sidebar here. So I'm going to open up the terminal, and I'm going to run the command here. So the commands that I'm going to run are now going to be short out, since we don't need to create our virtual environment. So I'm just going to have to create my Django project, and then the app that we are going to be working with. So that is all we are going to be doing. So here now I'll run the command to actually run create my project, and that is Django-admin start project. Then I'll call my project my app again, just then I'll add a full stop. So now I'm going to run that, and we are going to have our project being created. And after that, the next thing that we're going to be doing is to actually create our app itself that we're going to be working with. And I'm just going to rush through the code and everything, since we already did it in the last class, so that we can quickly move on to what we have today. I need to install Django. So I forgot to install Django before starting, so I'm just going to install Django, pip install Django, so that we can have that in our virtual environment. Okay, so our Django is already installing, and once that's done, we'll just create our app and we'll move on from there. Sorry, it's taking time, but there's nothing we can do about it. Okay, so the installation is done. Now the next thing for us to do is to run and create our app. So I'm just going to rerun that code to create our app. Okay, so that is done. Now the next thing that we need to do, like I showed us, is to actually go to our settings.py, and in our settings.py we are going to add the app to our installed apps right here. So the name of my app is app, so I'm just going to add it right here and add a trailing comma. So from there we can move on. Okay, so then the next thing we are going to go is to go to our urls.py here, and we are going to configure it right here. So I'm going to add the path to that particular to the particular app right here. So I'm just going to add an empty forward slash, and here I'm going to have include right there. Okay, and here I'm going to have app.urls. so this include here, this is one of the benefits of PyCharm that we didn't have in VS Code the last time. So once I hover over this, because it's bringing up an error and I need to import it, as you can see here, we see import this name. So once I click it, I already know that the import I need is django.urls.include. So once I click on that, it imports it for me, and I don't need to start racking my brain on how to get that done. So once that is done, I go to my app and I create my URLs here. So I'm going to create a Python file, new, then Python file. I'm just going to name it URLs, and I'm going to come back here. I'm just going to pick up this code, and I'm going to come here and I'm just going to paste it. Okay, so I don't need the admin, so I'm just going to remove that, and this I'm going to leave this as empty for now. I'm going to remove this line, since I don't need it. Okay, so then the next thing that we did was to go to our views, and we created a simple view here, and I think we named it home. I'm not so sure if I'm correct on that. So then we are going to add a request, and here we are creating a function. So I'm just going to say return HTTP response, then hello world. So here once again I'm just going to import this, and as you can see, the import is here and we can easily just generate that. So that has been added automatically. Then in my app.u, okay, not this one, in app.urls, I'm going to add that, and that is going to be I'm going to add it to an empty path, and I'm going to say views.home. So I need to import my views as well. So once it brings that error, you can just click on it, then you import. There are many different type of views, but the one that you want to import is the views in your app that you created. So I'm going to import from app.views, and with that we are done. So finally we are going to run python manage.py run server, manage.py run server. So that would open on port 8000, and we should see hello world being displayed for us. Okay, so we're just waiting for our server to run, and once our server runs, I'm just going to leave it on. Okay, so I'm just going to open the server here, and I'm going to share us the screen. So hopefully we didn't skip any step that we looked at last in our last class. Okay, I'm waiting for my browser to load up. Okay, I'm getting an error here. let me just make sure that I'm not having any. Okay, we already have our app.urls set up. So our view is set up as well. Our URL here set up. Okay, let me see. I think setting it to empty would actually take that error off, would stop having that error. Okay, so let me share. I think taking off the forward slash actually sorted the issue for us. So okay, so let's go back to our project, and in today's class, what we would actually be looking at is how we can set up our database and the create models. Because when we are talking about Django works on an architecture known as an MVT architecture. MVT architecture, which is a model view template architecture. So because we are not working on web application, we are not going to be focusing on the template aspect, because the template aspect is talking about the HTML template. The model aspect is talking about the models that actually manage the database. That is, instead of us creating writing traditional SQL codes, we use models to interpret our tables. And the views that, as we can see here, are what now handle the processes that we are going to be running. So every process that we are going to be doing will be written as views. So that is the MVT architecture. So it's a way of organizing our projects in a very good way. Like I said, for us to now do that, we would actually have to create a super user. So the first thing, I'm going to open another terminal. I'm going to keep this terminal running. I'm going to open another one, and here I'm going to run a code, a command that would actually allow us to create a super user. The super user is going to act like the overall admin. The super user will have access to every of the database information. So that is what we want to create, so that we can have a view of the database, the backend, and how it works. Now by default, Django already creates a user model for us by default that has so many features, and that is what I'm going to be showing us. So here I'm going to run a command, and I'm just going to say python manage.py create super user altogether. And here, for me to create a super user, is going to ask me for an email, a username and password, rather a username and password. Okay, but as we can see here, it's telling me that I cannot create that because we don't have the table for that existing. That is what this is saying. Now for us to do that, there are two commands that we need to run. We need to run a make migrations command and a migrate command. The make migrations command helps us to compile the database, and then the migrate command helps us to push those changes to the backend to actually implement them. So like I said earlier, I said that the Django automatically already has a user model that has been created for us. So without migrating that, we have not actually implemented it. So we need to run those two commands to implement it, which is whenever we make any change to our database, we need to run these two commands, which are make migrations and migrate. So here I'm going to be running that. So we have python manage.py make migrations. So I'm showing us this error so that we would know that if we come across them, we don't have any issues. These are just the things that we need to run, because it's important that we understand that in case we skip a step and then we're having those errors. So as we can see here, we are seeing all of this. We didn't create any of this has been automatically created by Django itself. So all we just need to do is migrate it, push those changes to our backend. So after that, I can now create my super user, and it's going to ask me for a username and a password. So here I'm going to add I'm just going to create a simple username and password. I'm going to say Papi for my username, and for the okay, it's going to ask us for an email address as well, so we can enter a default email address. I'm just going to say papi@gmail.com. So this mail does not exist, but when you are creating a super user, you need to make use of a mail that actually exists, because you could actually configure to actually receive emails and send emails as well. So after that, it's going to ask me for a password, and one thing that we need to note is that our password is not going to be visible. So as I'm typing it, you won't even see it, so you just have to be careful. So I'm going to type my password now, and once I'm done, I'll click on enter, and it's going to ask me again just to verify. So if you are entering a very simple password or something that is similar to your username, it's going to give this error, and because my password is actually short and obviously it's just the same username, I use my username as my password, so that's why it's giving me this error, because that's not secure enough. So if I want to bypass the validation, I want to create the user anyway, then I enter Y, which is yes, and then it's going to create that for me. Okay, so I'm going to close this terminal, and recall I left my previous terminal open because I want the code, the web page to still be running. So now I'm going to go back to the web page, and I'm going to show us how we can now view the admin page. So now I believe that we can all see this. So in the URL bar, we already have this 127.0.0.1/8000, which I told us in this our local environment represents our domain. So I'm going to enter //admin, and this should take us back to the discussion we had in our last class about how to access the various URLs in various apps. And like I told us, an admin app has automatically been generated for us. So for us to go there, we need to access the /admin. Then it's going to go to the URL path or route for the admin, and it's going to get that for us. So once we do that, we are going to come into here now. So this is the default page for the admin. So I just need to show us that. Then let me go back and share the screen properly so that we would have more focus on the screen. Okay, so now we can see the admin page, and I'm just going to come here. I'm going to enter my username and password, and I'm going to log in. Okay, so once we are logged in, we can see here now, this right here is an app. This authentication and authorization here is an app that has been created by Django automatically. We have two tables right there. We have the group table and we have the user table. So we would be going into this user table so that we would have an understanding of what this table contains. And as you can see here, we are seeing this table here. This table has some fields. It has a username field, an email field, a first name field, last name field, staff status field, and we can see some filters right here. Here we can show the count. Okay, how many users are there? Now we can see all these counts right here. So these are some of the functions that make Django a lot more easier to operate. So we don't even need to have an SQL interface to do our crude functions, create update, delete, which other one, I've forgotten the R. So we don't need all those ones. So here we can add a new user if we want to add from our backend. And as you can see here, we can see all of this right here. So you can enter our username, create passwords, and so on and so forth. And I'll go back to the user, and if we click on this particular user, which is the one I created here, we can see this here, username. Now the password here, we can see the password has been hashed. So that is one of the benefits again. So the password has been hashed, so you cannot just gain access. You can see the first name, last name, the email. We can see all these permissions right here. So we'll actually be working with this user template that we have right here. So that is just what I want us to note. Now let's go back to our code, because the corrections, the new things that we are now going to be adding are what will now be reflecting right here. Okay, so we are back to our Django code now. Now in our Django code, what we will now need to do is we will now go to our models right here. Now like I said, the models is where we create like our database, our tables for our database. So here I'm going to be creating a model called student, and for us to create models we make use of classes. So I'm going to say class, I'm going to say student, and here I need to add is going to inherit a class. I believe we should have knowledge of what inheritance is. So it's going to inherit another class. It's going to inherit from models.model, just like that. And after that, the first one I now want to create is I want to add a foreign key to that user, to the user class. So here I'm going to create a user, and I'm going to say models.foreign key. So here I'm creating a foreign key, and I want to link it to the user here. So that user is the one I just showed that has been automatically created by Django. Now for us to make use of it, I need to import it. So once I import that, I already have it right here, django.contrib.auth.models, then import user. So here I can use this particular field to actually authenticate every student, so for their login and for their registration. So after that, I'm going to add a field which is the onDelete here, and I'm going to say models.cascade. Now what this does is that if I should delete a particular user, it would automatically come and delete the student that is related with it. So if I am adding this to everything that every class that I create, every table that I create, if the user that is linked to that table is deleted, then automatically that student will also be deleted without me deleting the student. So that is why we have the models.cascade right there. Okay, so I'm seeing we don't understand. Okay, please can you turn on your mic and just let me know what you don't understand. I can't hear you clearly. I didn't hear you clearly, sorry. Okay, so like I told you in our last class, I said Django is a framework and it has a way that it works. Now if we look to programming, we call something object oriented programming. Now that is what Django makes use of. Now this class that we are creating here represents a table, and every field that we had, which the user field, we are going to add other fields, every field that we had represents a column in that field, in that table rather. I hope we understand the concept of tables in database. Do we? Oh, okay. So that is exactly what we are trying to do here. We are just trying to replicate that. So it's for our Django project. For us to replicate that, we need to create a class. The class here is representing the table. The student is representing the name of that table. Now there is already a model that has been created that has all the features that represent a table in a database. That's the models.model. Now because we want our table that we are going to create to actually follow that model, then we now need to inherit it. It's more like the inheritance between a parent and a child. Once a child inherits the trait of a parent, it looks like that parent. So here I'll give an instance of a father that is light skinned and is a stammerer. Now if a child inherits that trait, the child is also going to be light skinned and also going to be a stammerer. So that is what this is actually doing here. So instead of me having to configure my class to actually be a table and to have the attributes or the qualities properties of a database table, I just need to inherit models.model that has all those properties, all those qualities has already been defined in it. So once I inherit it, I just have all that same quality. I have the same quality automatically. Then what I now need to do is to now make my own unique. Okay, these are the tables, these are the fields I want to have in my tables. So that is just what we are doing right now. So we are now declaring the columns that we want to exist in our table, and the first column that we have here is the user column, which will actually um, map the user table that has been created automatically by Django, and is going to act as a foreign key. So we are creating a one-to-one relationship. Now that is what we are trying to do, a one-to-one relationship. One student can only have one user, so which means that one user, as long as you're a user, you can only one user can be linked to one student. So you cannot have one user linked to two students, the same way that your matric number is only linked to one student. So that is what we are now trying to do. I hope you understand. I hope you understand, guys. Okay, so we'll move on from there now, and we are going to add some more fields here. So as a student, I believe we have every student has a matric number. Okay, thank you, Abraham. So every student has a matric number, and here I'm just going to say models dot char field. Now this char field is a character field. It allows us to enter characters. Now we can define how many characters that we want to have. So now we are defining properties of that particular column. So it's going to be a character, just like we have a varchar in database SQL. We have our varchar. Here we have char field. So char field is somehow closely related to that. So here I can determine the maximum number of characters that you should have, which are the properties. So I'm going to say max length. I'm going to say our matric number should roughly not be more than 20, hopefully. Then again I can set it to unique. Now this unique, we know that is not our primary key. Unique does not necessarily mean is our primary key, but is a unique field because only one user, only one student can have one matric number. So I'm going to set that to true. So unique equals true. Unique equals true. Okay, I just want to be sure that we are following. Now another thing I'm going to set, which is another property that we need to have, is I'm going to set null. Null is going to be false, which means it cannot be empty. We cannot have it empty. I'm going to set base, is it base? No, blank rather. Blank equals false. So by default, if you don't set this to false, these two values to false, by default it is false already. So I just, if it is a field that we can do without, then we can set it to true. So which means that if that field is not entered, it's going to be true. So from there I can just remove it, since I just told us that it is not necessary. So I think another thing that a student would have, let's just add one more field. I'm thinking, what field can we add? Okay, let's just add date created or created at. So this would be a boolean field, created at, then I'll say models dot boolean field. Then I'm going to add a default. This default is like a default value. So when is it created? No, not default. Auto add now. Auto. Am I getting it right? I just want to be sure of the field that we are going to, the property. Let me see. Okay, I think it's default. Yes, default, then equals auto add, okay, underscore auto add now. Then I think we would import that. I'm a bit skeptical. I can't remember this code very well. Okay, what I'll just do is I will add a date, say date time dot now. So what I want to add is, once the user is being created, it should add a date to it automatically. Oh, I see the mistake I'm making. It should not be a boolean field. This should be a date field. Yes, that was why I was having an error with the property, because the created at is meant to be like a date. Okay, when was that particular student probably registered, something like that. So that was why I was having that error. So if you have auto auto now had, then I'll put true. So this here would actually give us the exact date that that student was registered. So we don't need to add this automatically. So this will be added automatically by itself. We don't need to add it ourselves. So with this now, we've created a simple model for a student, and the model contains three fields: the user field, which is a foreign key. We also have the matric number field, and we have the created now field. Okay, guys, please give me a few minutes. Is showing me a warning that our class is going to end very soon, so I want to quickly extend it if possible, and if not, we are almost, oh, unfortunately I'm unable to extend it, but nonetheless we are almost done with what we have for today. No problem. If we are unable to cover up what we have for today, then definitely. So, but according to what I have in plan for today, we are almost getting to the end. So because I need everyone to actually practice and take this one step at a time, because once we get to the views, we would not have to come back to all of this again. So the views is where we'll now focus on, okay, this is the process we want to run, this is what we want to handle, and so on and so forth. That's what we'll focus on, the backend processes. Okay, so after we've created our student, now this is our table and these are the fields. So that is sorted out. Now the next thing that we now need to do is to now go to our admin.py. Now in our admin.py here, we need to register our model, we need to register our table. Now if we don't register our table is going to be created after we run. And I said once we create our models, anytime we make any update to it, we need to run two commands: python manage.py make migrations, and then python manage.py migrate. So that is the two commands that we need to run afterwards. So if we don't register our models in our admin, the models are going to be created, but we will not be able to see them in our backend, just as we saw the other time. So this is the place where we can actually customize how our admin page is going to look. This is where we are going to customize it, and we are going to be following the same object-oriented programming pattern. So here I'm going to create a class, and I'm going to call it student admin. And here, just as we did with our models, I'm going to come here and I'm going to inherit from admin dot model admin, just like this. So admin dot model admin. Now one thing I want to do here now is I want to state how the informations that the table should actually display out for me. So I may want the table to actually, once we want to create a new user or want to view the table as a whole, we'll see all the informations. But once we want to get a snap view, just a brief view of what the table contains, this is where we can actually state that. So here I will just say list display. After that, I'm going to add the values that I want. So I'm going to add user, which is going to show the user that the particular student is linked to. After that, I'm going to add matric number. So I want it to display that as well. Then let's go back to our model. We have created art. So I don't want it to display this created art. I don't want that information, is not needed for me personally. So I'm not going to add that. Then I go back to my admin.py. So these are the two information that I want it to display for me. Then I come down here. I'm going to add admin.register admin.site.register. Then I'm going to add two things. So I'm going to add student, which is the model student. Then I'm going to say my student is linked with my student admin. So I'm going to import this. So what I'm trying to say right here is that I'm registering the student model to actually, or let me say link. I'm linking them that, okay, the student admin I created here is actually linked to the student model that I have in my app.models, and this is the information I want it to display for me. So there are so many other things that we can add here. We can add a filter. We can add list filter, and the list filter here we can have our matric number. So which means I can filter based on matric number. So I'm just adding that just to show us. And if we only have one value, we need to add a trailing comma, just like this, to prevent error. If we have more than one value, we may not need to add a trailing comma, but if we have only one value, we need to add a trailing comma, just like this. So once that is done, then we'll now go back to our terminal. let me just quickly run us through so that we would have a view so that we won't make any mistake. We came to our models.py, we created our model, which is a representation of our table. We have the student model with three fields here. We have a user field, which is mapping our user model that is automatically created by Django, and we are using it as a foreign key. We have our matric number, which is a character field and is going to have a maximum length of 20, which means once it's gone beyond 20 it's not going to accept it. And it is also a unique field, which means two students cannot have the same matric number. Here we have the created art field, which is also a date field, which allows us to enter the date for the date the student was created, the student object was created. And here we have a property called auto now add, which allows it to automatically add the present date that the student was created. And after that we went to admin.py, then we created the student admin, which is going to work as the admin configuration, and we registered it and we gave it a list display, which are the important things that we want it to display for us if we are not viewing the old data. And then we have the filter right here. Okay, so like I said, the next thing that we now need to do is to run so I'm just going to break this. I'm going to break it. I'm going to use Ctrl C to break that, and I'm going to run make migrations and migrate. So Python manage.py make migrations, and once that is done, I'm going to show us a bit of something. Now we can see here, we see migration for app, then we see where it is stored, app migrations 001 initial.py. then we see the exact migration that he made, create model student. Now in our app, if I come right here to these migrations here, we can see this right here. So these are the list of migrations that we make. Now this is where the whole SQL SQL part of it, this is what would actually run to actually create that particular database for us, that particular table. And as you can see here, we see the name, student, we see the fields, and we see matric number, created at, and user. And here we see an ID. Now the ID, if we look at this very clearly, the ID is now what has been set to a primary key. And if we go back to our model, we see that we didn't add any ID. Now by default, when we are working with Django and you create a model, it automatically adds this field for you, which is the ID field, or the primary key field, which is the PK field, and it sets it to true. So it makes that primary key to be true. And as you can see here, auto created is true, which means it creates it automatically. We don't need to create it at all. So this is what is now converting that to a an SQL code. So this is the SQL part. This is not the SQL code per se, but the models.model that we are importing here, it is what is now doing this for us, that is recreating what we have here to this. Normally we don't need to rack our head around all of this and all, but I just need us to understand why we are doing what we are doing and the importance of it. So that is that. So anytime we make migrations, if we make another change to our model and we run make migrations, we'll see this. It will show 0002 underscore initial.py. So it's showing our gradual changes as we make changes to our database. And the last time that we run make migrations and migrate, we had this file automatically created for us, which is our database SQLite. Now in our settings.py, if we scroll down, we'll see right here these databases. These are database configuration. Now SQLite is a lightweight database. It's also a database that we can use like MySQL, MS SQL, Postgres, and so on. So, but the thing about SQLite is lightweight, and we can use it for small projects or development when our project is in development. So we can use it to test our projects and all. So that is what we configured right here. But if we are going to use MySQL, MS SQL, the configuration that we will need to change this whole configuration. So once we run migrate after our make migrations, this actually converts all of that to a certain code. So here we see that we cannot really open this code, but I'm going to try and open it as a text. So as you can see here, hopefully we can see here create table. We can see here create table user with id blah 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 blah. So this right here is now our SQL code. Now the make migrations that we did, once we run migrate, it creates those SQL codes and run it automatically, so we don't need to write our own SQL code any longer. So I'm just trying to show us those things as they are going. Okay, now like I said, the next thing that we now need to run is migrate. So we've run migrations, then we now need to run migrate. So this is going to now push those changes that we made to our model, is going to push it to our database, and as you can see, our migration that we did is now applying that particular migration. Then after that, I'm now going to go back and I'm going to run my server once again. So once my server is up and running, okay guys, now we can see now that our student model has been added to our admin. Now for us to now actually create a student, we need to create a user and also link that user to a student, because right now the user that we have is the one that we created, which is our admin. So we don't want to link our admin to the current user. So sorry about that, my network is the connection is currently readding. So this, I created this offline, so I'm just going to be deleting it, and I'm going to be creating a new user so that we can work with that. So when we create a new user, this is the admin that we created. So I'm going to create a new user now. I'm going to give it a username and I'm going to give it a very strong password. So I'm just going to recreate the previous user that I just deleted. So, and I'm going to give it a strong password, and I'm just going to save that. So once that is saved, I'm now going to create a student object, and I'm going to link that student to the user that I created. So here I can easily select the user and I can give it a matric number. Okay, it brought out the matric number I used previously, so I'm just going to save that, and with that we already have our student object has been created and it is linked to the user that we actually created. So we can see that the displays that the display that we chose, that we set in our admin, is what is currently showing here, but we can also display the time that the object was created. So now I can add that particular field. I just removed it, so I'm just going to add that back. So as you can see right here, created at, so I just added that, and I just need to go back to my web page and just reload. So once I reload that, I can easily just have that showing up, and we can have that and work with that. Okay, so as we can see, I just need to reload that page now. Okay, I think the app is reloading, and we should have that. Okay, now as you can see, we have that being created for us. Okay guys, so this is how we can actually work with models, and this is just a simple way of showing us around it. It's bigger than that and all. So that will be all for today's class, and we'll move on from this point in our next class. Thank you so much guys, and see you in our next class.